time. Incidentally, Harry's back there. Harry is another guy who came from the other end of the spectrum. Harry, stand up. Harry's from the island of Trinidad, and he came up here for this conference, and we're happy to have him. So I always meet a bunch of new people, because we like to think that our group that has been meeting before represents a family of about 500 or 600 people, and we got 200 or 300 family here. Now something new has been added. If you will look at the TV screen, our geniuses here with the TV cameras are able to get a picture of the speaker. So if you want a close-up, a little bit different type of picture of the speaker at any time, why, you can watch the screen over there. They think that's a good idea, especially you folks over here. Yeah, so you can see them either way in living color. Peter Inman is our next speaker. I'm going to read a little bit here about him. Born of a Southern Baptist minister, he began his own Baptist ministry at the age of 16. In search of a greater religious understanding, he then entered the St. Benedictine Seminary, where he stayed for 3 years. After that, I will now paraphrase a little bit. He studied in a 1-year residency in a Krishna temple, and then a 10-year program of Jewish Kabbalah studies. And then for a while he went to Mexico for a few years and studied the ways of the shaman masters. Then he was taught by a fellow named Don Ramon, a Yaqui Indian, I guess I pronounced that right, on the herbal methods of the Pima Indians and their knowledge of herbology. And then they went to Ignacio, Mexico, and discovered a powerful shaman healer who taught him the ways of exorcism and focused on the ways of healing of the spirit and the body. And he has studied in his time such things as acupressure, reflexology, nutritional science, midwifery, massage therapy, first aid. I introduce to you one mixed up kid, Peter Inman.
Boy, after that, I don't know what to say. Peace, love, and blessings to each and every one of you. The focus that we would like to share with you, each and every one of you today, as you understood, I had traveled through healing methods, I had traveled through religion, and it all came down to a particular facet. Each one of us have options. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to feel good? Because it will never happen until you do. It can't. How many of you desire help from the angels? When was the last time you gave them permission to help you? It cannot happen till you do, right? In this philosophy, which is not a philosophy, it's a way of life, there is a very interesting point. Each one of you, have you ever asked yourself, what in the world am I doing on this planet called Earth? What was so important about this planet that this little boy inside, this part of God on the grand adventure, came down here and designed this body? And in this design of this body, why was it so important that I even have a body? If this part of me was God before it came here, and it's going to be God when it leaves, then what is the adventure? What's so important? It had to be important. I'm here. And what I got back from up there was the only reason you needed a physical body was for feelings and emotions. Because each one of us are on a grand adventure called learning to love you. How many of us love God? Mm-hmm. If you're a part of God, what's wrong with you? When was the last time you gave permission for you to be loved? I would like to share some options in thinking which really deviate from a lot of other ways, and yet from this particular standpoint, it gives you choices. In this adventure, this thing up here called mind, I said, why are we giving it so much power? And they asked me a question. They said, does this mind get to go with this spirit when it leaves? I said, I don't know. So as I looked and I observed when a person decided, hey, I've done this body enough times, and they got out of the body, that spirit stretched a little bit and it was gone. It never stopped and undid this and reached in and took this out and put it under its wing and took off with it. Doesn't work that way. So why are we giving this so much power? Have you ever had an original thought? A question. What is this? This is a radio. This receives thoughts from all of us out here. From each one of you, I get your set of laws, L-A-W-S. And your laws tell me what you will allow in your life or what you won't allow. Have you ever met a person you totally clashed with? It was because their set of laws was so different than yours, you didn't even have a starting place for conversation. Right? Now, if this is transmitting a set of laws to each and every person I meet, and I don't give them permission to love me, then how do they have to treat me? Without love. A lot of us are giving of this, but we're wondering why we're not getting it back. You know, right? I give, but where's it coming back? You haven't given permission for it to come back. And it's not any harder than that. In this adventure that you call life on this plane, these feelings and emotions come from one desire, and that is the desire of every one of us here, and that is to return to the source of all things. To return to the source of all things, what do we have to do? Vibrate in pure love, right? What are feelings and emotions about? Learning to vibrate in pure love. For whom? Not for anybody else out there, for you. Could you give to someone else something you don't own? Say I wanted to pass out health bars. I changed that. And usually I say Hershey bars. If I wanted to pass out health bars, what would I have to have before I could pass these out? I'd have to have the health bars, right? If you want to give love to somebody else, what does it require of you? That you love you. Each of us in a moment-to-moment, day-by-day process are going through not understanding our newspaper. This physical body you created. You designed individually. What would you change? You created it. Do you know that when you look at somebody, you are already in conversation with them? You're finding out what it is they desire to learn, where they're going. You look at their body features, the way that they have constructed their physical body, and it tells you the type of person they want to attract into their life, or the type of person that they don't want as a partner. It's really simple, and it's easy and gentle. In a private class, you can arrive at a place to where you are doing what with the individuals. You can help them find out what it is they want to change most in their life. Have you ever asked yourself, I desire to change this, and then known how to do it? It starts with you first off giving yourself permission. In this grand adventure called life, what would bring you joy? What causes ill health? Who knows what causes ill health? You say not listening out here. How about not listening in here? Who created this little boy or girl in here, the spirit, right? It designed it. What is its only means of getting your attention? Through its creation. But there are keys that go along with this physical body. And the keys are the major chakras. Your first chakra deals with what? Survival. First off, procreation. That is so that there will be more bodies. Second chakra, this area, deals with fear. Why should fear be placed here in second chakra? It was important enough for the God inside to place it here. It is here to tell you, you have already done that before and do not have to repeat it. It's your teacher. How many of you have ever given yourselves permission to be afraid? With an understanding that, hey, fear is my teacher. It tells me I've already done that. It means I don't have to do it again. Right? And it's simple. It is for you. Healing comes from you. You are responsible for it. You created the unrest. You're the only one that can change it, unless you think somebody else out there is angry at you. You did it. You can change it. This area right in this part of the body all deals, this is right on the solar plexus. This deals with power. Why should you have power? Who is this? Right, to manifest, to create. What are you manifesting? Anything that would bring you joy that you desire to experience. That's what power is. We're not talking about force. Force is power without love. We're talking about power. How many of you call forth your power? Or do you think power, at some time or another, you were told that you misuse power and you can't have power? Who told you that? Someone who wanted to control you. Call back your power. Call back your birthright, that you may manifest all of these things out there that would bring you joy. Now, from this area up to the shoulder blades, this whole area in here, and it runs clear back here, all deals with love felt. It's called the heart chakra. In this heart chakra, that's what Jesus came to teach us all about, right? Love yourself. Love the Lord thy God. Love your neighbors. In place of a commandment, he told us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? What would happen to this whole world if everybody did that? Where does it start? It starts individually with each one of us. And usually what it takes is us getting so sick that we have to listen to the voice inside. That's usually when we wind up in a hospital. But it doesn't have to go that far. Each one of you on an individual basis can tune into that little boy or that little girl inside, that voice, and make physical changes in your body. With a simple statement, you can align your hips. And I probably know 8 different ways of putting hips in place. But if we can help you understand how you can put them in, what puts them out is when you pick on yourself, then you will know how to keep your bodies in alignment. And you don't have to give your power away to anyone else. You aren't an accident. How many of you think Earth is a prison planet? How many of you think you goofed somewhere else out there and got sent here to do penance? Come on. You're here for what reason? Because you are on adventure learning to love yourself. It was never intended that these bodies get sick. We designed these bodies to last 1,000 years. They used to. What happened? We forgot. Each one of us on this trip have you ever given yourself permission to get younger? Huh? I did. I'm a grandfather 4 times. And I'm out here having fun. And I gave myself permission that instead of every day getting older, I could get younger. And the body starts working with it. How many of you love you? All right. What does this love do for you? Those of you who raised your hands, do you ever get sick? You don't have time. You're having too much fun. Are you here on this plane for penance? Are you here on this plane for fun? It's up to you to decide. You're creators. You're master of your life. I asked the brothers this morning, I said, hey, explain this word called sin. And I heard a real beautiful one come back here, and it says, what was it? Such incredible nonsense. Sin, and what they told me was very simply being victim. How many of you are victims? How many of you are what you are because your father or your mother or someone else did it to you? Do they have more power than you? Does that feel good? Is this anger in here angry at other people because they created you? Or they designed you, or they forced you not to love you? No, you did it. You are masters of your life if you will take responsibility for it. And it very simply means I am. And it doesn't mean I am almost or I am becoming. It says I am already. Health is your responsibility. You're in charge of maintenance. And the only way that you can do that is by loving you. On this adventure into this, we're told, and you're going to be hearing it from a lot of other people, that time on earth is starting to get shorter. And we're not preaching doom. We're not preaching there's a time that each one of you have to pay back for all of your stuff. Can you, as this God that you already are you willing to own that you did it? That you designed your physical body? That you're in charge of maintenance? If it doesn't feel good, change it. Or would you have changed it from the design? Do you want to tell this God in here, when you look at your body, that this God made a mistake? You know, I should have been this, or, you know, I needed to be like this. I should have been this much taller or this much shorter. That little spirit within you, that God, knew what you wanted to learn in this lifetime. Knew the experiences that you wanted to bring into your knowingness. When you leave this plane, you take what with you? All of the feelings and the emotions. Not what you had to go through to get it, but the feelings and the emotions, all about loving you. Have you ever done anything wrong? Can God do something wrong? How many of you are blaming you for all of the mistakes you made? Have you ever thought of giving yourself permission to learn the hard way? If you give yourself permission to learn the hard way, then you're not making any mistakes. And people say, but I don't want to do it the hard way anymore. Do you want to tell this God in here that you wanted to repeat it because you didn't get it right the first time? Or you didn't experience all those emotions? Oh, no. Give yourself permission to learn the hard way. Because when you do that, you never have to do it again. You don't. You're not here to repeat and repeat and repeat. You're here to create new adventures into loving you, into allowing this body and this spirit to grow. This time that's starting to get a little shorter is getting shorter for what reason? Because Earth is tired of all of our junk we have left on her. And she is not going to go through changes as retribution for anybody. She's not telling you, you have goofed. You have an option. And the option is to do what Jesus told us to become as. Which was what? Little children. What is it little children don't have that we have plenty of? How about law? Kids are free. They don't have any laws. How about taking his commandment or his way of life and do unto others as you would have them do unto you and get rid of the rest of the laws? You're not going to hurt anybody. You're not going to steal from them. You're not going to kill them. That's not where you're coming from. That's not your desire. Loving you is the key. Being you. You're all right. When was the last time you said, I'm all right? What you see is what you get. How many of you remember that song? That was my theme song, and then I heard Frank Sinatra do another one. I did it my way. All right. How many of you ever said it's all right to do it your way? Are you hard on you? Do you think somebody else would have done it another way? That's their adventure. Each one of you are here for a very specific reason, and that is to find out what brings you joy. Joy. Have you given yourself permission that everything you did bring you joy? The moment you do that, your world changes. How many of you have ever read the Castaneda books? Okay. Castaneda had what was his major topic through the whole book? Change your point of perception. Because if you can see out here in all of this world and in everybody you look at another God, and they're on the same adventure you are, which is to learn to love themselves and to experience feelings and emotions, you'll quit picking on them. And if they say, I want to go do this for a while, say, go for it. I mean, then you quit judging people. You quit judging yourself. You tell, hey, if it brings you joy, go for it. There is a very, very good criteria that's built into all of this. The moment you give yourselves permission to have joy, what happens? Then you can ask yourself in here, I'm getting ready to sit down and eat. And you look at a menu and say, what would bring me joy tonight? And you only pick the things that would bring you joy. And if there's something in there that wouldn't bring you joy, does it mean it's bad? No. It's just right now your body doesn't desire that. Release your laws. Lighten up on yourselves. Start having fun. And that can only happen if you give yourselves permission. Are you ready to have fun? Are you ready to have a healthy body? How many of you are fighting this grand old thing called, boy, I ate too much? Huh? When was the last time you gave permission for you to only eat whatever brought you joy and quit? How many of you drive by Baskin-Robbins and look the other way? Have you ever given yourselves permission to go sit there, order up their 6 scoops, all chocolate, all the different chocolates, and then pour, hot fudge over it, and pour anything else that's chocolate over it, and just enjoy the heck out of it? Or do you think that's too fattening? Immoral? Huh? Would it bring you joy? If it would, why not go for it? Lighten up on yourselves. If you restrict yourselves to a point of view that said, I can only do this and I'm only allowed this, what is your life? Where are you going with it? Does it bring you joy? No, you're in penance. Guess what happens to the body? The body starts falling apart because you don't love it. You pick on yourselves. The hips go out of place. I have a wonderful electronic piece of equipment. And I've used this quite a few times when I hear people come up and say, and they start giving me an old law. This is my electronic equipment. And I take this and I reach out like this and I say, they have been doing a lot of testing lately. And they have found out, because all of us out here said, we have a soul. Medical profession says, then you got to prove it. All right. So they started doing some testing. And the testing they did, they put terminal patients on real fine quality measuring devices. They found out that when the body dies, soul leaves it, the body loses 13 ounces. And it didn't make any difference whether it was 7 years old or 70. It still lost 13 ounces. They also found that it is usually centered right in this spot when they were measuring various parts of the body. So I just reached down here and I plugged them into their God and I said, now what do you want to tell your God? Would you tell your God what you just told me? Oh, no. I said, why not? This is what you're speaking. This is what you're calling forth in your life. And if each one of you would get you a little tool like this and hang it on the refrigerator, and every time you want to lay a trip on yourself, reach out, plug yourself in and say, all right, God. And usually the very first thing that happens when you plug someone into their individual God is, I don't know what to say. How about, I love you? You know, let's start with the basics. In the event you are willing to take this first step and say, I'm here because I asked to come here. I wanted to learn to love me. In this adventure called I want to learn to love me, what happens to everybody around you? What do you start seeing in everybody? All of us on the same adventure. Every one of us. And the adventure is loving. Can they do it wrong? What is the secret behind all of this? You have all of eternity to get back to the Father. Right? Back to the source of all things. We have all of eternity. And this change that's getting ready to happen on this plane shortly is for those who want to graduate. And for those who aren't finished with third density, there is nothing nowhere that says they have to. There are other worlds being created for those to go to. Earth will simply not support third density. That's this stuff. And you say, well, where do you get your information? Look at Jesus. Jesus came back to who? The apostles. And he walked through walls, he walked through doors, he appeared wherever they were, and he held out his hands to Thomas and he said, put your fingers in the wounds. He was firm enough for them to feel these wounds. And yet he could come and go and disappear. He came to show us what our next body would look like. He said, I came to tell you about it. He's going to take us there. But on what grounds? That you love you? That's the only requirement. This chakra, heart chakra, working. You can't earn it. You can't say at the last moment, I love me, I love me, I love me, because it won't work. Because you're not sending out those vibrations that said, I love what I am. This is my adventure. I'm doing it my way. And this individual body and creation of mine, I'm in charge of. If it doesn't bring you joy, change it. Can you? Is there anything God can't do? Then what would bring you joy? Do you know with a simple statement you can put your hips in place? And I don't care if one leg is that much shorter than the other one. And I've had people lay down on the table and they come back and they say, oh, but I broke that leg when I was a kid and the doctor told me it would always be shorter. So guess what's shorter? Because you bought somebody else's law that said it would be shorter. And all you would simply have to do, and this is for each one of you individually to try, to prove it to yourself, is you can stand, you can put both heels together, and if you have to reach for one of them, it means you have a short leg. Fair? I mean, each one of you will test it out. In that short leg, simply say, I release my judgments over me. Take a deep breath and find out what happens. How many of you have a long hallway that you go down often? You hear yourself as you walk down the hallway going slap, pat, slap, pat, slap, pat. What happens when one leg is shorter than the other one? Really? Well, let's take a look at this. Here I am, all of a sudden I've been told anybody that walks with a limp, something's wrong with, right? So if everybody knows I've got one leg shorter than the other one, they're going to say something's wrong with me. So we start walking with one leg bent, the long leg, just enough to compensate for how much shorter the other leg is. So nobody will know. And you can test it by looking at your shoes. The long leg, you're walking on the toes, on the heel, and the short leg, you walk on the toes, because you don't want anybody to know. You start walking like this, and with this one bent so nobody knows, you have a shorter leg. And what puts the legs out? Right here in the hip section. What do the hips represent in the body? It's our fulcrum point with Mother Earth. How we deal with why we're here. And if you're picking on you, what are you saying to you? I don't have any value. I don't have any worth. I ought to. I should. I need to. If you were plugged into God all the time, would you be telling God, hey, God, we got to do this? I should be. God, you need to? Come on. Quit picking on yourselves. Simple. You can test it yourself. You can find out. And the moment you prove it to yourself, when will you see that the next leg is out? The next time you start picking on yourself. It's simple. It's easy for each one of you to verify. It usually indicates you're having knee problems because the hips are out. You're not walking straight up and down, and every time you take a step, you're putting torque on the knee. And that doesn't feel good. You don't have to hurt. Let's look at your bodies a totally different way. How many of you have cars? Okay. In these cars, what are they? They are your means of transportation to move this hide wherever you need to go, right? What are your bodies? They are transportation to move this God wherever it wants to go. Now, it's your design. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to keep it up? Give yourselves permission. Okay, next step. You kind of wonder, how powerful are you? How many of you are fighting the battle of the bulge? How many of you think food is fattening? Be the same people that raised their hands before it said they're fighting the battle of the bulge. Because all the skinny people out here know food isn't fattening. And that's the only difference. They usually eat more than we eat, and they never gain any weight. Because they have never bought the idea that food is fattening. Right? That's the skinny ones. Look for skinny ones, and they'll tell you, oh, no, food's not fattening. You know that, don't you? You disagree with that one, huh? All right, so how do we make a law in our life? Real simple. Here we are, we're looking at all these laws. How did I ever buy a law that told me food was fattening? Somewhere when I was a kid, they told us we had to clean our plates because these kids over in China, boy, they were starving. I had to clean it. For some reason, they never took or sent my plate to China. So guess who carried all this plate to China? You know, I'm doing penance because they're hungry. When I found out that I made a law when I got an idea and I gave it a feeling and I spoke it, my whole body vibrated it, that became a law. That simple. Now, how can I change that? By understanding, hey, I've done that already. It doesn't bring me joy. And so I say, from the Lord God of my being, which means from my soul, this little boy in here, whatever laws I have owned that tell me food is fattening, I release. Then what do, I release myself. I dropped 55 pounds in 5 weeks doing that. And I found out I had never changed my eating habit because food is not fattening. How many of you believe everything the government tells you? Then how do you know that food has calories? Have you ever seen calories wiggle? I sat 1 whole hour and never saw it wiggle in a chocolate cake, and I looked at it and never saw it wiggle. There aren't such things unless you want to believe in it. Change your laws. You're responsible. Does it bring you joy? Does it really bring you joy? Then who's in charge? Are you a victim? Or is it about time you became masters of your life? How do you become master of your life? By saying, I did this. This is my creation. And if I'm hurting somewhere, it's because I'm not listening in here. And if I'm hurting in this area, I very simply say, all right, fellas, what are you trying to tell me? I want to know. It's their way of getting my attention because I'm so involved in making this work or that work, or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I forget to listen. And so this little boy in here says, that. He goes, and I says, wonder what that is. Then he says, all right. And he really gets in there and he scratches like heck. By that time, I said, oh, something's going on. Then he's got a 2 before, and he said, ow. He says, now I got your attention. And there have been a few times I haven't even heard that one. And I find myself laying on my back in a hospital having to listen. How many times has this happened to you? And it isn't necessary. You don't have to wind up there. Learn to listen. Take time to listen to this little boy or little girl. Now, as I look across this audience, what do I see? I see a lot of people saying, but if I were God, I could create food to feed the Ethiopians. I'd change this world. No, you wouldn't. This world doesn't want change. It is the mental concept and ideas of everybody out here that is keeping this way. When you, as an individual, change your concept, your belief system, and said, I'll change me. And if I change me, then I've started it. And that's where it starts. You are what? An adventure into love. You are light. Have you given yourselves permission to be that? There was a gentleman up here that was telling us about the eyes. And he said, all of dense matter is frozen light. Well, I don't know what freezes it, but I'm here. So are you, okay? You're frozen light, but you're light. We have taken this understanding of being God down as far as we could get from the source of all things and said, I'll prove it's still worth loving. And then we got down here and did what? We forgot why we were here. Simple. We came through a veil of forgetfulness. And this veil of forgetfulness said what? I can do it again. I can go from scratch. I can take this body, which I designed, and I can take it and move it and love it and then remember why I'm here. And it's no harder than that. That was our agreement, each one of us. How many of you want to graduate? How many of you that want to graduate have given yourselves permission to graduate? All right. First step, give self permission. Because the moment you start that, you change your probabilities. You start calling in whatever is necessary for you to experience so that you're ready to graduate. And graduation is when this vibrates love and light because you love you. And that's it. And it is not any harder. You've never goofed. You have only learned the hard way. What I would like to do at this present time is to open this up and for question and answers, but before I do that, I kind of stopped right here when I was going through the various chakras. And they just reminded me I better finish the rest of these so you'll get some more ideas. This fifth chakra, which runs from right underneath my nose down to the throat, the back of the neck, is the fifth chakra. This deals with love expressed. This is love felt. This is love expressed. When this starts to bubble, it has to come out somewhere. For those of you who look around and see all of the people who are going through, oh, I hurt so much, having all kinds of problems, what are they saying? Have they ever said they love themselves? The next time you start to get a pain back here, say, I love me. Who else am I supposed to say I love? And watch it change. Immediately. Now, third eye. That covers this whole area here. And this all deals with seeing God in everything. Can it even be here if it wasn't God? Could it exist on this plane if it wasn't God? How many times have you looked in the mirror in the morning and said, hi, God? Well, that's who you are. Crown chakra, seventh seal. Seat of non-judgment. Seat of non-judgment. Because when you start seeing God in everything, and you tell God how much you love God, you're going to quit picking on God. And it just can't get any simpler. How many of you are having shoulder problems? I bypass those on purpose. Shoulders indicate carrying other people's stuff. We have nice pockets for our fears, for our power, for loving us, but this is other people. Have you ever stopped to think what you're really telling somebody else when you take on their stuff? First off, you've judged them that they can't do it. And the second thing is, you don't want them to experience it, but they came here to do that. It doesn't mean that when somebody comes to you and says, boy, I really did this to myself, and I really know I did it, now what do I do with it? You know, the old adage, hey, Dad, I've got the world by the tail, and 6 months later, Dad, the world's got me by the tail. You know. If they come to you and say, I did it, now what do I do with it? They've owned, they created it. Now they desire to make the change. And it first starts off with them giving themselves permission to make the change. Nothing can happen because of what? What out there stops anything till you give it permission? Right. But what came from the source? Total free will choice. Is anybody else judging how you do it? Somebody following you around, keeping score, giving you brownie points and demerits? Why, my back's not a scoreboard. I'm harder on me than anybody else out there would be. And each one of us are. But it's our adventure. And the moment you can look at your body and say, oh, that's what's going on, I give it permission to change. Boom. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to change. Or I release whatever law is bringing this into my life. Boom, it changes. And it's no harder than that. When we first came to this plane, none of us had ever been to college anywhere. None of us could write a thesis. So all of our agreements were so very, very simple that we keep overlooking them. Lighten up on yourself. Don't worship a radio. Do you know how to take the power away from this radio and return it back to God? It's so simple. When was the last time you said, how do I feel about this? Because the moment you bring feelings into it, this one cannot play. How many of you know there are no nerves in this gray matter up here? When they do surgery, once they're beyond the skull, they can go anywhere they want to. Could it create a feeling for you if it had to? Uh-uh. So all you have to simply say is, I want to know what this feels like. And you have taken all the power from this and returned it back to this. But the first time you say, what do I think of that? Guess what happens to all the power? Back up here. Where did this get controlled? Each one of us gave this control. As a little kid, you started hearing what? No, don't, stop, don't do that. This little girl, little boy in here says, oh, come on, I'm not going to buy this. So it gave permission to create altered ego up here to deal with law. Your laws, parents' laws, aunts' laws, uncles' laws, grandparents' laws, everybody else's laws. And each one of you finally got to a place in your life where nobody was telling you, no, don't, stop, don't do that. This little boy or little girl says, all right, I get to come out and play. Hush, this is in charge. So it starts doing things to get your attention. All you have to simply say is, I'm worth loving. I desire to know what this feels like. And you will start changing your life to encompass loving you. Now, I'd like to open this up for whatever few minutes we have left here to deal with question and answers. Are there any out here? Or is it so radical that, you know, who has ever told you you're in charge of it? Yes, sir.
Why do you say that you're implying, I believe, because one of us is his own God? Is that what you're saying?
We are each a part of God. Yes, sir.
If we are a part of
Thank you for that one. In going back, and because I went through all the religions of the world asking myself, is there something they know I need to know? And I wanted to know if someone out there told me I had to come here and earned being loved. And this source, the God that I know, Jesus said, love yourself. Love the Lord thy God.
Tell me what scripture that you said that. Love yourself.
The Lord thy God and thy neighbor as thyself.
Love thy neighbor, yes, but doesn't say love thyself.
Can you love your neighbor as yourself? I mean, unless you love you, you can't love your neighbor.
Well, that may be implied, but it's saying they say so explicitly.
I'm understanding, and I'm not at war, because each one of us are in a particular place to where we had to question what was there till it brought us joy, or till we found peace. And the peace that I found was in knowing I'm here to be loved. And my desire to get home, to return back to the source, says I'm worth loving. And if I can't love me, then nobody else can. I want to go home. I want to go back to the source. I want to be loved. To do that, I have to love me, because nobody else can.
Oh, yes, you can. God can.
Then this God,
Far beyond yourself.
did this God send you here for retribution?
No.
Penance?
He sent us here, this is our school, in preparation for the world to come.
The millennium.
Yes.
And Jesus told us what? Right. Right. Well, Jesus told us we had to do what? To even get in the millennium. Become as little children?
Yes, that's part of it.
Which,
Only part.
all right, what are little children?
God is not a baby. God is real. And so Christ is God.
Yes?
I don't think you've mentioned Christ at all.
Oh, yes, I have.
A couple of times.
To me, they're the one and the same.
Very good. Good.
There is no mistaking that particular aspect. This is why I share back. Jesus told us we had to become, first off, like little children. To me, I asked myself, what is it little children have I don't have? I watched little children. I watched my grandchildren. They don't have any laws. They were free. They loved themselves. They were on an adventure. And if I want to get into the kingdom of heaven, then somewhere along the line, I have to give myself that same freedom. I have to become as that. And this doesn't mean being born again. It means giving myself permission.
You don't give yourself permission at all. God gives you permission.
Then there is no purpose for me to be here.
You're so far off, it's amazing. I'm not prepared to debate you in a proper way. I have to admit that.
Okay.
But I can tell you, you're way off.
We can... Yes, ma'am. Yes, in fact, we're in the process of doing a book called The Next Step. And the book will be, we're doing tapes, we travel around, we do private sessions, I do classes. I teach people how to heal themselves, how to understand what their body's trying to tell them when it is going through some changes, and how to work with it. We're here to help you make those changes, but we have a table back in the back. If you want to get with her, we'll talk to you. My wife is back there, and a beautiful red-headed lady. Yes, ma'am. What are problems with the feet correlated spiritually? The feet are our major way that we appear with Mother Earth. They're our foundation parts. If your hips are out of place, it means that you're walking off usually on the side of your feet. The feet are straight and square on Mother Earth. Once you have changed the hips, it changes the way your feet are, and usually changes the way you walk, everything. It's really simple.
If you have pain in your feet,
Pain in your feet is because there's more bones in your feet than anywhere else in your body, and a lot of them are usually like this. They jump up on top of each other. It hurts to walk because you have been walking off on the side of your foot for so long. And I show you real simply how to put your own feet back in place. Yes, sir. You designed them that way usually. Yes, ma'am.
I understand everything that you shared in the last hour. I don't experience my joy the way you choose to experience your joy. I kind of relate to this man
This is why we're all here on this adventure, each of us doing it a particular way that brings us joy.
Exactly, so I understand the way
Okay.
you shared it, and I know a lot of people choose to do it that way, and I know a lot of people experience it the way I
Right.
do it, and I think somehow,
I was there. I was there, I understand it.
yeah, and I think somehow maybe he feels that there's only that one way.
And that's fine. We're not at war with that. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's really frightening to think that we might be responsible for ourselves. If somebody else is responsible, we can always blame somebody else.
Right. Thank each and every one of you. It's been a pleasure. Peace, love, and blessings.
Thanks, Peter.